At this time, I would ask that we stand. I have a few words. I'd like for us all to take a moment of silence for all of the students that we have lost thus far this year. Two of our young students recently last week from Wade Hampton, but we have a total of 6. And it's very difficult to lose our students at such a young age when they have their whole life ahead of them. But they've left great memories, and I'd like for us to keep their families, friends, and all those who know them, love them, and pray for them. At this time, take a moment of silence, please. With that being said, I would ask that Ms. Morrison Fair give us the blessing, and to follow, Mr. Sailors will give the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Let us pray. Dear God, fill us with the spirit of gratitude. Teach us to be thankful for every talent, gift, and ability. Allow us to freely use these gifts to contribute to the successes of this amazing school district. Forgive our selfish behaviors as we face unknown challenges and various uncertainties. We ask for hearts and minds that come together, reason together, always putting others first. Lastly, we always want to give thanks for our many successes and the opportunity to learn and grow from our mistakes. We humbly ask for your blessings, and we are appreciative for another opportunity to serve the students of Greenville County Schools. Amen.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Adoption of consent calendar. I would entertain a motion to
approve.
Mr. Sutton, is there a second? Second by Ms. Goodwin Caldwell. Any questions? Hearing none, all those in favor, please address by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The motion carries. 3.01, appearance of visitors. Our visitors have been given a copy of the board of the procedure to follow. Each person will be called in. They will go to the podium, and at this time we will ask for Sean Bazar to enter. Sean,
yes.
Thank you. I'm Linda LaVentus Wells, board chair, and we welcome you tonight. Just a couple of little brief comments. I know you've read everything. You know, you have 3 minutes. Mr. Lewis is sitting to your left, and he will start the time once you start speaking.
Okay.
The light will go off with a minute left. You have 3 minutes to speak. Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay, before we get started, I have a handout for the board members.
Yes, sir.
Appropriate or?
I will ask if Mr. McCoy and Mr. Davies, if Mr. Davies can pass them out, that would be great.
I have one for the public record if that is required.
We welcome that. Yes, sir. And Ms. Spitzer is coming to get that from you.
There you go. Thank you so much.
All right, you may proceed, sir.
Very good. Well, thank you so much, Madam President or Madam Chair, and the school board, and also the executive committee. What I've come to talk to you about is to request two things. First, the superintendent of schools to identify that 5 days a week is best for the kids. And then for the board to affirm that. And I know that there's a governance and to move that forward. What you have in your hand is some data, which you've probably seen already, but I want us to go away from an emotional decision to a factual decision upon going to 5 days a week. So some data that's in there is you see that, excuse me. So in the cases, this is Greenville County only for cases, which I believe is figure 1 on your paid handout. It shows lots of cases. And it shows actually the 21 to 30-year-olds have the highest amount of cases, which is equal to approximately 2,827 cases. But then as you move back in your handout to figure 2, you go to deaths. And you see for less than 10, 0. 11 to 20, 0. 21 to 30, 0. 31 to 40, 0. Now, there is a little blue note. I'm not trying to gloss over and get off the facts that any cases under, if there's 5 or less cases, the data is suppressed to 0, I'm sure for statistical meanings. So for all intents and purposes, let's identify that as 0, okay, if that's fair. On a 3, figure 3, you see the hospitalizations for the county, and the 11 to 0 to 10, 0.89%, 11 to 20, 2.09%. These are very low facts, low numbers. Now, if you go to number 4, figure 4, excuse me, I must not have said 3, but anyway, 4. I compared flu from March 1st until the most recent provisional information. And as you can see, that the death rate for flu is 2.2%. The death rate for, and this is overall cases, 2.3%. I also want us to identify that it's not all about the flu. I guess I'm complete.
Thank you. I'm
No
sorry,
problem.
but your 3 minutes are up.
No problem.
Thank you, sir.
I hope you guys make a good decision. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Be wiping down the podium. Before we bring the next person in. Are you gonna wipe that down? Mr. Davies. Okay. Yes, we're gonna wait till we wipe it down.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Yes, my mistake.
Thank you, Mr. Davies. Thank you, Mr. Turner. Is it Dr. Turner? Dr. Turner. Thank you, Doctor. Doc, getting the sanitizer. Okay. Mr. Davies, will you get Sarah Head for us, please? Sarah Head,
Hi.
Linda Leventis Wells, I'm board chair. The board of trustees are surrounding you, as well as administrators. The administrators up on the in the chair where Mr. Lewis is sitting. He will be keeping the time. You have 3 minutes. I'm pretty sure you received the procedures as far as what's expected, but at 2 minutes, a light should go off, letting you know that 2 minutes are up. You've got a minute left, and we will begin once you start speaking.
Okay, my name is Sarah Head. I'm an advocate of school choice. I have 3 children. It's in school at Greenville County Schools, a 9-year-old, 6-year-old, and a 3-year-old. I just wanted to touch on the fact that I want the choice for 5 days of in-person instruction. I've heard that the #1 issue that's prohibiting us from this is the 6 feet social distancing guidelines. And I would like to know at what point are we going to take a stand and realize that if we don't have the space or the capacity to do that, that we are going to accept that this is the school, these are the schools that we have, and we're going to work through that. I believe that we can accomplish that goal. So I'd just like to hear your thoughts on that. I know that I've talked to some of you on the phone and emailed with you, but I just feel like if there's any way that you can figure out how to get elementary and special needs students back full-time, face-to-face, that should be a priority. Also, the fiscal cliff that we're hearing about that we could be going over, what are the details of that? I don't really understand how we could be in such a financial dire straight situation. Can you please provide more information on this, on the financial situation that we're in? How many total students are enrolled in our hybrid option? And I guess really I just want to say that I feel like Greenville County Public Schools has done a great job providing options for students for many years, and the choice for 5 days face-to-face should be a choice that parents and families should be able to make. I'm begging y'all to think about how this is impacting the future of our county and our state by not allowing these children to be in front of a teacher every day. It's sad. I'm seeing it every day. I witnessed it with my own children, and it's impossible to navigate it with 3 children who are all on different academic levels and all in different grades. You cannot physically do it. So I'm begging you to please look at this more. Go to people's homes. I mean, you can come over to my house. Just, I guess that's it.
Thank you, Ms. Head. Thank you so much. Okay, Andrea Lowry. Six.
She gets set up. She gives some directions.
Okay, do I need to keep my mask on for this? Okay.
Andrea, I'm Linda Leventis Wells. I'm the board chair, and surrounding you are the board of trustees as well as administration. Mr. Lewis is sitting in that chair, raised his hand. He will be keeping the time. You have 3 minutes to speak, and the light system will be green for the first 2 minutes. And then when you have 1 minute left, it will turn yellow. Okay? And we will begin once you start speaking.
Okay, and I can remove
You may remove that, yes.
Okay. Like it fogs up my glasses. Anyway, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak this evening. Before school even started, 2 different back-to-school proposals were on the table, and we as parents were asked to make a choice for which educational delivery we wanted to utilize for our children. My husband and I considered everything we could based on the information we were given and many discussions with school personnel. After these discussions and weighing all the information we received, we decided the hybrid program was the option we would utilize for our children. Unfortunately, the choice we made based on the proposal presented does not match the reality of the situation we are in. Out of 10 core teachers between both of our children, only 1 is delivering on what was promised with the hybrid program. She is teaching when the children are physically in her classroom and creating and posting instructional videos to be used on e-learning days when they are not. Let me stress again, 1 out of 10 children, 1 out of 10 teachers is doing what we were promised. Most of the other teachers are doing what we have deemed in-person e-learning, where the assignments for the days the children are at school and the assignments the days they are at home appear to be identical. The majority of their physical in-person days are spent learning from their Chromebooks. We even have 1 high school class without a teacher. The assigned teacher was put on administrative leave on September 3rd and has still not returned or been replaced. In the interim, his teaching responsibilities were assigned to an assistant principal at the school. In direct correspondence with this assistant principal, he said there will be no in-class instruction at this time and that he would only post class assignments and be available during office hours for questions. Using yesterday's in-person school day as an example, even the bare minimum he promised has fallen short. Our child and her classmates sat outside their classroom for 10 minutes after the start of class, waiting to be let inside. Once they were inside, they were greeted with no posted assignment in Google Classroom and spent the rest of the period without any work to complete. As a fix to this situation, we had requested to have our daughter be allowed access to the virtual school for this one specific class in hopes to have some instruction, yet this request was not even addressed in the email response we were given. Even though in-person instruction has halted for this class and assignments are sporadic in posting, tests are still being given for these students. Enough time has passed to have had this handled in a more appropriate manner. Has anyone at the county compared the virtual school instruction and the student progress to that of the in-person hybrid program? Are our children being left behind because we chose in-person over virtual? We chose the right learning environment for our children, but that learning environment looks nothing like what was promised. The hybrid program is not being successfully executed as proposed. It was good in theory, but falls extremely short. 5-day in-person instruction is essential. Let the teachers get back to teaching our children in the classroom full time. Let them focus on one area and do it to the best of their ability.
Sorry. Thank you, Ms. Lang.
That's all right.
Thank you.
Thank you. God, that goes fast. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Where did Mr. Davies go? He has to wipe that down. I want to know. Ready? Okay. Teresa Beeson. Ms. Beeson, I'm Linda Levinas Wells. I'm your board chair, and you're surrounded by all of the board trustees. Mr. Lewis will be keeping time, the 3 minutes. They're also the administration is also surrounding you, as well as media. With that being said, you received a copy of the procedures. You have 3 minutes to speak, and the light system will be green for the first 2 minutes. And then when there's a minute left, it will be yellow. Okay? Thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thank you. I'm concerned about what's going on in children's lives right now. Being on a computer for several hours during e-learning days, several days a week. They aren't interacting with their friends or their teachers. They aren't developing their relationships with the teachers they have so they can learn that they are unique and important. These teachers that are trained to help our children feel special every day, they are skipping slides or lessons and just trying to turn in assignments, missing out on the most important part of education, learning from someone who cares. How can they feel something through a screen and learn new things through a screen? The thoughts and the feelings they feel from interacting is how they learn best. The kids need to be back in school in a learning environment every day. The teachers need to do their job, teach children in person every day. The reason we moved to our neighborhood is for the schools. Let them do their job to the best of their ability in their classroom every day. My daughter likes going to school every day because she likes to see the different teachers. The things that she doesn't like about e-learning is she doesn't get to see the teachers' faces, and she's in first grade. These teachers are special to their students. Let them build a friendship so they can teach and our children can learn every day. Let's not delay. Let's meet the needs of the children. They trust us for their education. Let's rescue them from the internet to the good feeling of being unique every day.
Thank you very much, Ms. Beeson. Thank you for being here tonight. Yeah. Ms. Kimberly Ryson-Wooten. Kimberly Ryson-Wooten.
Yes.
My name's Linda LaVentus Wells. I'm chairman of the school board, and you're surrounded by all of the board trustees. Mr. Lewis is sitting up on the stage. He will be keeping the time to 3 minutes. Also, administration is surrounding. I do want you to know that the 3 minutes in the beginning, the light will be green for the first 2 minutes, and then it will change to yellow when you have a minute left.
Okay.
Also, at the end, the superintendent will designate a member of the staff to respond to each speaker in an appropriate and timely manner.
Thank you.
Okay.
And where is the light? I'm sorry. The green light is. Oh, thank you. I did not see that. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll begin whenever you're ready.
Okay. Well, thank you, first of all, for allowing me to come and be with you tonight. I greatly appreciate that. First of all, my name is Kimberly Ryson-Wooten. I currently have 2 daughters that attend, who should be in school 5 days a week in Greenville County schools. I have a 7th grader and a 9th grader. And right now, I have to say this is not the best learning experience for my children. My oldest has an IEP and is greatly struggling, as well as many kids in the upstate. I know the decision has been made to provide safety for our children, and I would encourage you to visit the home of these children and see the challenges they face on a daily basis. It is heartbreaking to see children who have a desire to learn, who have the determination to overcome, and who want to be all they're created to be. But without the attention and the assistance of educators, they're challenged and they're struggling. I have pictures of my daughter laying almost under her bed because she can't get in touch with the teacher to answer her questions. She can't get on a Google Meet because the connection's not bad, or unfortunately, for some reason, the teacher wasn't available for it. I know we are doing all we can to provide safety for our children. And safety I do want. As a registered nurse, I've served Greenville County for 25 years. But I am begging you to take your eyes off the disease and put it back on our children and their education, because they are the future of this city. And if we can't educate them, if they can't read and they can't write and they can't make decisions and have critical thinking, who will we turn to take care of us into the future? So I appreciate your consideration of opening our schools 5 days for face-to-face instruction for our children and offer them the same opportunity that we once had. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Wooten. Thank you. And like I said, someone from the district will be contacting you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Ms. Ashley Martin. Ashley Martin.
Yeah, can I take this off?
I'm Linda Leventis Wells, and I'm the board chair.
Yes, ma'am.
And you're surrounded by the Board of Trustees as well as administration.
Yes.
So I just wanted to, you received the procedure, but I just wanted to give you a minute just to settle here a minute.
No, I'm fine.
You've got 3 minutes.
Okay.
The light will start out as green with your first 2 minutes, and then it will change when you have a minute left to orange.
Okay.
Also, what I wanted to tell you are yellow, not orange. I'm sorry, I got Clemson people surrounding me and I just feel like, but it'll be yellow. Also, at the end, I wanted you to know that the superintendent, Dr. Royster, will designate a member of the staff who will contact you later on at appropriate and timely manner. Okay?
Yes,
so we will begin, and Mr. Lewis is up on the stage. He will be keeping your time, and you've got 3 minutes once again. So we will begin whenever you're ready.
You just want me to start talking?
Sure.
Okay. So I started the press group. I'll just say that first. So I love or hate me, I'm here. Kids are struggling. Teachers are struggling. Parents are struggling. There's aides that are cramming 5 days of work into 4. At what point is enough enough? Many teachers aren't afraid of COVID. They are afraid of being thrown in a room without a plan and asked to manage masks and keep kids socially distanced. They can't possibly teach and keep up with restrictions in the name of safety that is being placed on them. Teachers are concerned about their first grade students not being able to hold a pencil, much less write their names. We know that March through June, they did lose critical time. Parents are beating themselves up because they don't feel adequate or qualified to teach their children, not to mention the added burden of employment or lack thereof because they've been forced to stay home. I understand that tough decisions have to be made, but from what it looks like now, the ball is being punted around and no one is willing to make a play. Unrealistic, unreasonable, impossible environment. Do we really want a generation of kids that are incapable of critical thinking, but know how to wear a mask and socially distance? This Friday, I'll walk my seniors onto the football field and we will face a stadium that's empty. This is the moment they get for their accolades and all they've achieved in high school, and there won't be anybody there to see it. We have to think about the risk-benefit ratio. I want personal responsibility and accountability for my children. I don't expect y'all to bear that burden. I want some of it. I want what is best for our community, teachers, all of you. I know the burden that has been placed on you is huge, but you're changing the course of people's lives with your decisions. I have moms calling me saying they don't want to do it anymore. They can't. It's pretty bad and it's colossal. And I would just ask that you reconsider a face-to-face option that is fair and equitable for a lot of your students and teachers that are literally dying under the pressure. And that's all.
Thank you, Ms. Martin, for being here tonight. Thank you for expressing. And like I said, someone from the district will be contacting you. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Yes, sir. 4.01, Superintendent's Report. Dr. Royster.
Thank you, Ms. Levinas Wells. I do have a brief superintendent's report tonight, but before I start that, I would like to introduce two new principals, though some of you may have seen them already. You'll recall that we made some appointments earlier on, and for various reasons, those individuals weren't able to be with us. They're from out of state, and they are now with us and working. And I believe that Mr. Davey, but okay, there they are. Let me first introduce Grayson Wells, and I believe he has with him his wife Kendall. Correct, Grayson, who is the new principal at Tanglewood. A very experienced principal in more than one state, but he comes to us directly from working with the New Tech Network. So, Grayson, welcome to Greenville. A little bit late to welcome you, but you're already in it with both feet now. We look forward to having your continued leadership over at Tanglewood. You may feel free to remove your mask and say something if you would like to. Mr. Wells?
Yes, sir.
You can either stand there or you can just talk loud.
I can talk loud.
Either of the two.
Thank you. I just glad to be here in Greenville County. Just very honored to be here. Really passionate about the Tanglewood community and love being there. I couldn't have picked a better place to be. So we're very happy. My wife and I, Kendall, this is my best friend and boss. And just glad to be here and look forward to seeing how Tanglewood is going to turn around and move forward. Make all of you proud.
Thank you, Grayson. I know that you all are off to a good start over there. Got an opportunity to spend a little bit of time with you on the first day. We also have tonight to introduce to you all Sophia Samboneras. Did I get it close? Okay. And I believe you have your husband Emmanuel with you. So if you'd like to share a few words as well, the new principal at Hollis.
I am at Hollis Academy. I know that this is the first formal introduction, but I have felt very welcome and supported since I first started back in June officially. I'm very glad and very fortunate and honored to be part of it. It's a difficult time, as everyone in the nation knows, but I feel very confident.
Thank you, and welcome again. And very similar to Mr. Wells, comes to us from a highly tenure in more than one school as a principal, and recognized for the distinction that she served with in both of those schools and the progress they made academically while she was there. And again, had the opportunity to go by and spend a little bit of time with her on the first day of school, and everything was going well there, and I know it continues to go well to this day. So again, welcome to both your families to Greenville as well. We're glad to have each of you with us. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Richard?
As has unfortunately now become the custom, we'll get a little update about COVID as the superintendent's report, but it will be a very brief update because you all spent a couple of hours with us the other day and got a very detailed update. There's a reminder of how the spread ratings are calculated by DHEC. A reminder about the running average.
If you're interested in this, you can watch this because this is public.
But I don't want to be on the screen.
As we have been doing, we have added the most recent week's posting of the DHEC ratings for the county. So you will see up there, not sure what that was, but you'll see up there the rating that came out yesterday, where we are medium, high, and medium, medium, high, and high, the same as Can we move that, either the screen up? Thank you. Last week, when we discussed this, last Monday, we were at medium, high, and high. We are this week, with the 2-week look back, including the new week, medium, high, high, with an overall rating of medium. That causes us to make no adjustment to our plan. We remain on a 2. What that does, though, I think also say to us, it is evidence of our ability to maintain the 2, but to continue forward with our path to move groups of our students to in-person attendance more than the 2 days a week. That is also borne out by our looking internally at our quarantine and isolation data. This is as of September the 22nd. We had 66 total employees out due to COVID-19, 9 of which were positive cases, 12 out pending tests, 45 quarantining due to exposure outside of work, 10 quarantining due to exposure at work, 5 through other employees, 5 exposure by students. On the student side, we have 323 students quarantining and isolating. We have 44 students isolating. Those are positive cases. We have 279 students quarantining. Within that number, the quarantining due to exposure in a building, on a bus, or at an athletic event. It's a total of 21, 2 from in building, 5 from on a bus, and 14 from an athletic event. That is obviously, we believe, a very low number, though it would be great if we could report there were none. Safety and health protocols we have in place are being effective. We think that helps to set the stage for us to continue to move forward with bringing in certain groups. And we've talked about those groups before. We've talked specifically with you all about Career Center students, most especially those in level 2 courses. We've talked with you all about self-contained students. At the middle and high school level, those 4 days a week, looking at level 2 Career Center, and middle school and high school self-contained 4 days a week, because those teachers have teaching responsibilities on the 5th day, either in virtual or in e-learning, in addition to their in-person responsibilities. And at the elementary level, looking at our self-contained through every elementary grade level, our pre-K, kindergarten, our 1st grade, and also looking at our 2nd grade. And what levels we might be able to safely return at the elementary, and those I just mentioned, 5 days a week, maintaining all the protocols we have in place, which we believe are essential to creating this kind of level of safety. And it's what our employees deserve, expect, and should be provided. That is, we're keeping their safety in mind as we're bringing in more students, that we're still able to maintain 6 feet between individuals, between students, between teachers and students. And as you know, we're able to do that with level 2 Career Center students, with self-contained students, because they are very small classes, small in number. Some cases, the physical location of that class will have to be changed to vacant rooms in the building. Self-contained, they have a little different ratio of aides to students as than they do in other classes. The elementary level, our 1st grade class sizes are such that we can maintain social distancing within their existing classroom. We're looking school by school, room by room to ensure we can do that. With pre-K and kindergarten, because those classes are larger. Even though the rooms are larger, it will probably also require some separation of students going with aides to vacant rooms, doing things while other students are in the class receiving direct instruction from the teacher. Doing things, when I say doing things academically related, set up by the teacher for the aide to carry out with them, or to spend time at recess, realizing we need to get, because the environment is much more restrictive than our students and our teachers are used to. More time might be spent at recess and outside than would ordinarily be spent to give them a break from the more structured atmosphere they'll be in. We are making significant progress in those areas, and we fully believe, based on the reports I'm getting in today, the information we've looked at today, the final look we'll give this tomorrow, that we will be able to announce tomorrow a very clear path forward and a timeline for returning some, in fact, probably the majority of those groups, not all of them, but some, likely the majority of them, in a defined timeline. We're still working through the files that we want to make sure, as we have done everything else, that we are absolutely certain that we can maintain the level of safety that we need to do, that we need to have for our students, and we need to have for our employees. That is foremost in our planning, that is foremost in our execution of that plan once it's adopted. We believe that we are making significant progress. We should be able to announce that. Now, likely, very likely, it would be a phased-in implementation. We wouldn't go to a full week the first week. It would be phased in over multiple weeks. Again, making certain that when we get those students in there, larger number, that we're effectively and safely managing not just their presence in the classroom, but the transitions they have to make during the day. So I'm very pleased to be able to report to you, I think that we're making significant progress on that path back to 5 days for our youngest students, and giving a priority to those students that we believe are most in need of in-person instruction more days than they're receiving it now. That includes the hands-on and the number of hours that our Level 2 Career Center students need to have. That includes the additional work, more intensive work that we need to do with self-contained special needs students, and the much more personalized, individualized, but in-person work that needs to be done with our youngest learners. Particularly a teacher who's trying to demonstrate phonetically the sounds of words to first graders, kindergartners or pre-kindergartners, some of the activities that need to be done with them. That is our place where we need to most quickly, provided it's safely, move back to 5 days. They are also the students who are less able to work independently from their teacher. When I say independently, remotely with their teacher. That's the reason for our prioritization, as we've discussed with you all before, and I think you did not hear any reasoning there that you have not already heard. But we believe that tomorrow we'll be able to make a much more specific announcement, including the specific grades, the timelines, and our movement forward in that respect. There are, I think, probably some other things. There may be a few questions that you all have. We don't have significant change in the information. One of the things that, though, is often asked of us, and there's a lot of discussion about, and in fact, we had this discussion with Representative Cox earlier this week. He had inquired about some of the challenges that we have with people being face-to-face. And you've heard mentioned in other districts and probably seen in other places the utilization of plexiglass partitions. And there are a few concerns with that, one of which has to do with impeding airflow, because it's extremely important, as I think you all have seen, have read, and you've heard us say, not to impede airflow within a room, because that's a key. That fresh air exchange is a key to minimizing the exposure to the virus. That's less of a concern with our youngest children because they're obviously much smaller, they're much shorter, they're much closer to the floor, and any plexiglass partition would not rise, obviously, to near the height that one would rise at a high school, for example, where in a high school, I'm not going to be the only one in that room that's 6'4". So there's fewer concern with impeding the airflow within an elementary classroom. The challenge and the issue we have with that is the current DHEC guidance regarding the utilization of plexiglass barriers is that it would likely mitigate the virus. It would probably serve as a barrier, but it's not been studied. Very difficult to make a decision on likely and probably. At its base, likely means 51% or better. They don't define it, but that's what likely means. It's better than a 50-50 chance. What's a little more disconcerting about that is if you have that construct in place, if in fact you put up plexiglass barriers and the children on either side of that barrier, if they were not 6 feet apart, even wearing a mask, you may have seen some configurations where they're set up in a 4. So you have a student here, a student here, a student here, a student here, a total of 4. There's plexiglass separating one's face from the side. Like I'm facing Dr. Turner right now. The separation is right here. I'm facing the side of his face, we're not face to face. Right now, the current DHEC guidance would be if one of those 4 tests positive, all 4 must be isolated, which does not reinforce the fact that that barrier is a barrier. It, in fact, says the opposite. The concern with that is, it seems to me that plexiglass is not a permeable surface. It should be able, I would think, to be said perhaps with greater and firmer language that is a substitute for 6 feet. Right now, the dilemma that would put us in is it's only said it's likely and it's probable. Then they go on to say, and if somebody's sitting in there and one of those people is positive, they have to all 4 be, well, 3, one of them has to be isolated and 3 of them have to be quarantined. If we could get the appropriate professional guidance regarding that spoke more firmly as to its utilization as a barrier in lieu of having to keep 6 feet. That might be particularly helpful at the elementary level. Again, we don't want somebody to say something that's not safe. But we need something, if it's either safe or it's not. And what we would ask for and have asked for would be greater clarity to that. Is that safe or is it not safe? Not likely, not probably. Is it in effect a substitute for 6 feet? It would seem, I think probably maybe to everybody in here, the people that are listening to this, it would seem that it would be. But that guidance is unclear. That would certainly be helpful, particularly if we look at moving beyond the grades we're in now, or when we look at that. Absent that, our avenues forward to bring students back in person means the virus has to get to a low level, or DHEC says social distancing is no longer required, or perhaps those plexiglass barriers are determined to be effective, or there's a vaccine and people have the option they take that or not. At that point, as I think we've heard speakers even say tonight, then it really does become a personal decision that doesn't impact the other individuals. It impacts only the person who chooses to do it or not to do it. So that's where we are. We believe we're on a very positive path moving forward. Obviously, it's not where everybody wants to be, but we only want to be there safely. and that is with every student in school, 5 days a week, receiving the highest level of instruction that they can possibly receive. Go ahead and try to answer any question that anyone might have, Ms. LaVenus Wells.
Are there any questions? Ms. Michelle Goodwin-Caldwell.
Dr. Royster, on that list with the medium, high, and high, I see where on September 13th, when you had medium, high, and high, it was considered high. But now on September 20th, you have medium, high, and high, and it's considered medium. Can you tell me why?
We will submit your question to DHEC because we have the same question based on our review of this data this afternoon.
Okay, all right.
I'm not going to try to explain their calculation because I may offer an explanation that is not accurate. I have that very same question.
Okay.
And we follow their guidance. We're following medium, high, and high. Of course, even had it remained like it was a week previous to that, we believe the safety protocols we have in place are keeping people safe. So it would not have affected what I said to you tonight. We would remain on a plan two. I don't think it would affect our plan, our path forward either, but I have the same question and I would rather hear their specific answer than me try to calculate an answer.
Okay. All right, thank you. That's all.
Thank you. Ms. Wells.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Royster, for talking to us about the partitions, because that was one of the questions I have, is I know that there are other districts that have gone that route. I wanted to see if you had any communications. We all received across the state, superintendents and school board members, a memo from Molly Spearman this week. And when I received it, I was frankly angry because it was pretty open-ended and it didn't really seem to have any clear guidance that demonstrated any more leadership than we've already received in terms of helping us figure out how to get kids back in school safely. But when I followed up with an email with a lot of very specific questions, Ms. Spearman was nice enough to call me and have a conversation with me. But in that, one thing she said to me is that her memo was really one of the districts that she felt like was doing a really great job was Greenville County Schools. And I was surprised because that wasn't really clear in her memo. She didn't say that there was any particular district. So I was happy to hear that, but I guess have you had follow-up communications with her about that and whether or not there are other things specific that she would recommend that we do beyond just that very general, very loose bit of information she gave in her memo?
No, as I think you probably know, because I copied you all on it, I sent a more formal letter to Ms. Spearman with some concerns similar to the ones that you talk about. Because, in fact, I had been with her the day before, as had Mrs. LaVenus Wells, over at League, where we got to be a part of presenting a new propane-powered minibus. And it was a little surprising to receive that letter in that it was sent to all districts because she had gone out of her way to share with us the day before that we were a district that was moving forward, that we could serve as an example to those districts who were not moving forward. Very complimentary of the things that we were doing and the manner in which we were doing them. We had a plan. It was well thought out. We were following that plan. We made adjustments to it when we needed to. A plan, in fact, approved by her office that had been subject to its every 2-week review the day prior to that, when we shared with them our intent to continue to move forward with more days in person. At least at this point, and certainly I shared with her, I know I felt like you weren't talking about us, yet you sent it to us. And I think there were other districts that would have shared that feeling. That in fact, other superintendents who did share that feeling that, why am I getting this? We're making progress. We're moving along a line that you all approved. I think in her response to me, she wishes that she had not done that in the manner that she did it, and acknowledged that she was specifically, as you indicated, directing that to those districts who seemed not to be making the progress that other districts were making.
In your
I have also shared with her what I shared with you all about some clarity regarding certain things from DHEC and enlisting her support in obtaining those things.
Good, because that was the one thing that I had asked about in my email to her, that I didn't really have clarity on whether or not she would help facilitate that. And certainly to your point about where the rates are right now and the partitions, you know, we need for the public health agency for the state to do their job, and we will follow their direction to do our job for education. So
again, and I think,
that.
although you didn't specifically say it, I know that you did in that communication. Neither you nor this body nor the administration are asking DHEC to compromise in any way their scientific and public health expertise and say something that runs counter to that. We're simply asking for greater clarity in what they say. And is this effective and is it not? And to, at least to me, to explain to me, I'm not an epidemiologist, I'm not an infectious disease expert, but explain to me in a manner that I can clearly understand it, why this, what I believe to be an impermeable barrier, would not be equal to 6 feet. And if you explain that, then I certainly accept your professional opinion, because that's what they are, the agency established by the state of South Carolina to give us guidance in matters of public health.
And the other thing that I pressed her on, which I haven't said in this room before, so I'll mention, is just that it seems that with different districts going back to school in different ways across the state, there might be some great data to glean from that and what's happening. And that I asked her if that would be something that she could facilitate sharing that data, and somehow collectively taking that information across the state about how people are going back to school and what impacts it's having on spread rates, et cetera, and using that potentially to change how they determine kind of what our risk is in taking kids back into the classroom. So
I think that's certainly an excellent point.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wells. Mr. Lewis.
So Dr. Fisher, I appreciate your comments, and, you know, as we talked about earlier, I think the idea of having the 4K, 5K, first grade and possibly second grade move back to 5 days a week would take a huge burden off of our families. Because you're right, those children in particular need significantly more one-on-one supervision than kids at older grades do. I think I understood you say here tonight and late and earlier that really without some sort of resolution to the 6 feet social distancing, the idea that that's going to somehow carry forward to middle school students going back 5 days a week is just a real heavy lift from where we are to there. So it seems to me, as I look at districts across the country, that the plexiglass barriers does provide a huge opportunity for us if we can get some clarification on that policy, because there are other districts in the state and districts like ours that have adopted that as their means to keep kids socially distanced and yet still be able to fit them safely in their classrooms.
Yes, sir. There are some districts doing that. Now, what we also know about some of the districts within that number, they also have class sizes that are smaller than ours. So in a few of those districts, they are using those plexiglass barriers, but they're also able to maintain 6 feet. And that's not, obviously that is not all of them. Some of them are simply choosing to use those plexiglass barriers. But again, our concern, our challenge with that is what I shared with you. And that is, well, you say likely and probably, then you say, if you're sitting there, you got to be quarantined. It would seem that might be somewhat, I would feel like we were not being as responsible as we should be to not take note of their less than ringing endorsement of using that in a way that mitigates having 6 feet.
And we've had prior success with plexiglass barriers at graduation ceremonies.
Yes, we used them in order for the principal and the graduate, glad you mentioned that, to stand side by side where it created the appearance it was just like any other graduation. And we believe worked very well. Now, that was about a 7-foot barrier that was about, I don't know, 4 or 5 feet in width. But we believe worked very effectively.
I believe I spoke to Ms. Grayson earlier today, and I believe the advocacy committee is going to consider how to take up this guidance from DHEC and see if we can help you with that. I guess the question I have for you, and maybe you don't have an answer, you can get it to us, but let's say that tomorrow DHEC revises its guidance and says, okay, we've done the research and we accept plexiglass barriers as an alternative to 6 feet social distancing. I mean, what would be the time horizon between ready, set, go and being able to see plexiglass barriers in all of our elementary schools, for example? I mean, is that something we could do in a couple of weeks, or?
We are, in fact, now already looking at what needs to happen and how quickly that could happen and how many we would need, just in case. So we'd be prepared. Now, like these other approaches, if somebody said that tomorrow, we wouldn't want to go in and do that the next day. As for one of the reasons I believe that we've been very successful in putting in place what we put in place is everything we've done it incrementally. We started on a 1. Obviously, it's half the number of students of a 2. But 2 still allows you to socially distance. Part of starting on a 1 was, can we get people to act in the manner that they need to act, wearing a mask, socially distancing, doing things very differently? We pretty quickly concluded within about 2 weeks' time, yes, we can do that. Let's shift to a 2. Now let's bring these groups in, and even with them, we'll phase them in. So if there were this miraculous answer that would allow us to use those and it would in effect replace 6 feet, we'd still want to phase that in because you still have a lot of transitions during the day. You got to come into the building, you got to go out of the building. There are some transitions within the building, setting all those up in a way that they go smoothly and maintain, because when you leave behind that shield, then you got to maintain that distance or make sure the increments of time are very slow. So we would still take a measured approach and an incremental steps to getting there. But we're, just like we do with other aspects of this, we explore a lot of avenues. We gather a lot of information to find out what would it take to do this if we decided that was a route we needed to go. So we're already working on that now.
I guess the other half of that question, which I know you often look at, is the cost of that. So if we said go and you had comfort and a plan to roll out plexiglass dividers in our schools, do you believe that the current funding that we have, that's CARES Act funding or funding that's reserved for these kind of emergencies, would cover those costs? Or should the advocacy committee also be looking at kind of quantifying what that cost would be for the entire state and going back to the General Assembly to maybe provide guidance for some of the CARES Act dollars that still remain unspent?
Well, we'd always want to use somebody else's resource before we have to use our own, because we obviously have needs for our own, and there's funding at the state level for those purposes. I think back to your original point, it would be extremely difficult, even with plexiglass, to deal with middle and high schools returning. But even at the elementary level, having 51 elementary schools and several thousand elementary classrooms, there's obviously a cost to it. I think the cost in Charleston County, I think they spent about $5 million, Mr. Davey, does that sound right? District-wide on plexiglass barriers. 3. I guess we extrapolated out 5 based on their 3. It would probably be under that amount if we only looked at elementary and we were able to satisfy with DHEC that this is an appropriate substitute. There is funding within the CARES Act that we have not yet expended. And if you'll recall, there is a significant amount of fund balance that you all set aside as a backstop, whether it be for economic downturn or mid-year budget reduction or items related to this. And I would certainly say to you, if this is what stands between us and safely returning, we would certainly recommend that you use the amount of money necessary to procure that. What we don't want to do is buy that and it doesn't in fact do what it doesn't offer the replacement for 6 feet. Well, we wouldn't want to do that then. And nor would you want us to, I'm sure.
I appreciate that. So I wonder if staff could maybe help us, because I think what was really effective for us when we were talking about replacing the buses across the state is that we were able to quantify what would it really cost to safely replace all of those fire-prone buses with safe buses for the entire state of South Carolina, rather than just looking at Greenville. And I wonder if perhaps we could use some of those numbers from Charleston to perhaps create some guidance for the entire state to say, if DHEC determines this is an alternative, this is what it would cost the entire state of South Carolina to be able to successfully implement this across the state. And so maybe we could use Charleston numbers to maybe come up with some estimated costs. Because I think that's a powerful case. I think being able to say in Greenville County it's going to cost us $5 million, I assume means we're talking about 45 to 50 million for the state, just based on the fact that we're a tenth of the state's population.
Yeah, that's a general good rule of thumb. That we're 10%.
$50 million investment by the General Assembly in a time of crisis with a supportive letter from DHEC could get all the elementary schools in the state to a place where they could get back to school.
And quite honestly, without going into tremendous detail, I think our path forward right now, based on our path hadn't been all that successful to this point, I think what we're going to do is submit to DHEC in writing, here's what we propose as a plexiglass barrier, these dimensions in this configuration, and see if they will give us a more affirmative answer based on our submitting specifications instead of us waiting on them to say, here's the barrier. Because I just think we perhaps might have better luck with that approach.
I appreciate that, because I do feel like we lead the state, particularly when it comes to pushing some of our state leaders to consider different alternatives to the services we provide. And I think buses aren't the only thing that this board has accomplished in the last 5 years, that the state of South Carolina, teacher pay increases really came from a push from us. So I'd appreciate any role that we could play in helping guide our friends in Columbia to help make changes.
Obviously, it'll take us a little while to put those specs together. We're doing as quickly as we can. We want to make sure we submit something thorough. But it occurred to me today, and based on some input that I got from Ms. Loggy, our health services coordinator, that I think the strategy we need to pursue right now is say, here's what we want to do in these dimensions, configured this way. And, we've got architects on staff that can submit, that we can send a design drawing in. This is what we want to do. Will you come off of likely and probably if we do that?
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. I agree. We need to be at the forefront and ahead of the game like we always are. Mr. Meek. I always gonna call you Mr. Rogers.
Thank you. Dr. Royster, understanding you're not a medical professional, but the CDC who recently put out some guidelines that, and then took them back, that the 6 feet was probably not where all that the aerosol that could go farther in smaller droplets. And I know that reading about it, that they said a lot had to do with the ventilation system. And I know that we have, because of our building program, we have much better ventilation than a whole lot of other schools. Can you expound on that just a little bit?
Yes, sir. As you alluded to, we're extremely fortunate that this board and its predecessor boards invested in the facilities in the BEST program. And subsequent to that time, we've gone back and upgraded HVAC systems in the schools that weren't in the BEST program. So throughout the district, we are on average turning over the interior air 3 times an hour. 100% turnover on average 3 times in an hour. And we have fresh air intake ventilation systems in every school. One of the things you pointed out in the CDC guidance, if you look at the information from ASHRAE, the Society of Heating, Refrigeration, and Air Conditioning Engineers, if you look at the CDC information, you look at the studies that have been done, the places where there's the greatest concern of indoor air quality and indoor airspace related to the coronavirus or any other disease for that matter, Legionnaire's disease, things like that. A lot of that, the key to it is fresh air intake and exchange instead of constantly recirculating interior air. And we don't constantly recirculate interior air. We turn it over and we bring in fresh air. As you mentioned, they issued guidance, then they rescinded the guidance. What we do know, and one of the reasons you all have seen some of this, because you've seen photos of it, you've heard us talk about it, where we have people doing things like choral music or instrumental music, you'll see they are way more than 6 feet apart. Most cases, they're outside. They're not only in excess of 6 feet, they're offset. So they're although they're front to back, back's over here and front's over here. We're in places where there is the tendency for, whether it be through musical instruments or through singing or through somebody yelling, then we're maintaining greater distances. And I think that's one of the reasons the protocols are in place at athletic events, whether they're high school events or college events. People express concern or issues about us maintaining social distancing. Well, look at Death Valley on Saturday. Look at Williams-Brice on a Saturday. You got it at Death Valley, more familiar with that than Williams-Brice. You got a 80-something thousand capacity stadium with 19,000 people in it.
Yep.
You go to a doctor's office, even one that has nothing to do with people going in there for COVID. Had to go, as you can see by the whole spot there, to the dermatologist. One person, no one with them, the patient only. You wear a mask the whole time. You walk in, you sit in a chair that is 6 feet from every other chair in each direction. They take your temperature and they ask you those same questions that we ask adults when they come into our building. So if that's the standard for these places, I think that simply reinforces what the standard should be for us. Because there are none of those places where you put an employee in a room with somewhere between 10, and if we had all of them there at every level, 35 people, and they stay anywhere from an hour to 6 hours in 800 square feet. There's nowhere else in the community that comes to mind where that's occurring. So I think your concern expressed, the concerns we have, that's borne out by the actions these other places are taking, either at someone's direction or because they believe that's the safest thing to do for their visitors and their employees. Again, we don't want to put anybody in an unsafe situation, but that airflow is extremely important. Maintaining that distance or preventing the ability for those particles to travel. When you think about it, though, sometimes it seems more logical if you had a barrier up in front of you, whether that was 2 or 3 feet away, it would seem it would more mitigate the travel of those droplets than 6 feet would. Now, again, that's me, because as you said to start with, I'm a doctor. I'm just not the right kind. I'm not a medical professional, but it just seems like that makes sense that could be certainly at least as effective, but it might be more so. Again, beyond my ability to say that's the safe thing public health wise. But again, I think our approach is we're going to submit something with great specificity and see if we can't get a more specific answer in response to our more specific request.
Thank you, Mr. Meek. Anyone else? Roy, I'm sorry. Shamley. Mr. Shamley, can you?
Talking to DHEC rather than me, having listened to parents.
Okay, I'm listening.
Okay, thank you. Having listened to parents for the last month or two, seen the presentations tonight, and heard from countless other folks, I might be a little bit more forceful and run the risk of having them tell me to just go take a hike. So I'm glad you're going to be doing it, but I would like to encourage you to really impress upon them the urgent need to address this. One of the questions I've got up here looking at are these numbers sent to us directly like this from DHEC, or are these numbers that we have generated?
No, sir. These are the DHEC numbers.
This is
directly from the DHEC.
Their spreadsheet.
Yes.
And while you're asking about how we go from high to medium, even though we're still high, one of the questions I've got, if you look on the far left there, the Greenville County confirmed new cases from 2 weeks ago were 48. And one day there were 28, and the rest of the time they've been way above and are now reduced down to 35. Just looking at that tells me that we're not increasing, we're decreasing. Now, I know they have some kind of crazy formula where they talk about, you see 14.7 on one side and 14.1 on another one and all that. But if you could ask them to really dig into how they're coming up with these figures, I think it would be helpful for all of us. And I think when we talk about DHEC, I think it's important that they understand that it's absolutely critical that we get the real information. And I would reiterate what you said about the barriers. The report last week from CDC was, no, it's got to be more than 6 feet because aerosolized droplets float out a lot farther than just regular droplets. And then the day they took that back. In the meantime, WHO says, no, it's got to be more than that, even 13 or 20 feet, which tells me that there are a whole bunch of real live, honest to goodness experts that haven't got a clue what they're talking about. Now, that's just me. I don't want to, talk about anybody else, but it tells me that really, when we're talking about what do we do with children in classrooms, and you see the numbers we've seen, 2 apparently got it from being in a classroom. I think maybe 4 more got it from being on a bus. We're not seeing all of a sudden that one of these supercells that we keep hearing about with motorcycle drivers and people like that. So I think it's really critical for us to do everything we can. If DHEC is going to be telling us what we have to do or highly recommending what we have to do, if we can tell them with as much positivity as we possibly can, please get us some answers and get them yesterday rather than tomorrow. And that would be the only thing I would say.
Yes, sir. That would not be inconsistent with what we have said to them.
Mr. Shamley, I'd like to thank you. That was great information. Thank you for sharing. Dr. Cristobal O'Connor. Dr. O'Connor?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Dr. Royster, when you're talking about the potential for plexiglass in a classroom, are you talking about just to separate the teachers from the students, or a number of different barriers so that you could replace the social distance with those between the students as well?
Well, in fact, we would primarily be focused on the separation of student from student, and then trying to use the ability to narrow that distance by effectively replacing it to provide a little more space for the teacher to move around, but maintain the 6 feet for the teacher. But that wouldn't preclude us using plexiglass, you know, if we thought that was effective in helping maintain safety for the teacher. But our primary focus would be on student separation. Now, realizing we talked about earlier, we talked about for example, using 4 desks and that plexiglass to really form a pod of 4. You'd then need to keep the pods 6 feet apart, because you could end up getting so much plexiglass in there you couldn't move around.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to envision, how you would make that work. So
it still obviously has limiting factors, but it would provide us greater flexibility than what we have now. Because right now we're simply, how can we best fit people in there to maximize the number? Not can we use something to mitigate some of the 6 foot requirement so we can get more people in there. Realizing you got to have pathways to move around. Students have to come in and out to some degree. They also have to go to the restroom. They have to enter and leave the classroom. You all know all those things. So we have to do it in a way that still allows a reasonable flow of student transition in the room. Even though they may have to wear a mask during that transmission, they still have to get around.
Right. Okay. Can you tell me off at this meeting how many homeless students we have, or is that something I could just ask you to send me?
I'll have to send you that.
Okay. I know it varies, so you may not have had the number.
It does, and you also know that we follow that federal definition that isn't always aligned with what people, the general public, might think of as being homeless, because homeless in the federal definition, it would include a student that's going somewhere, they have a place to go at night, but it might be with another relative.
Or a couch or a hotel or...
Right. So it's not just, as one might think, it is a child that truly is on the street. It does include those students, but it follows that broad definition that the federal government under the McKinney-Ventnor Act requires us to follow. But we'll certainly send you that. It would not be unusual in a normal year to have somewhere under 1,000, but around that number qualified under McKinney-Ventnor.
Okay.
But the number that people, when the general public pictures homeless, there are people in that number they would probably not ordinarily picture being in that number.
Yeah, that's all right about what they picture, but just what we know by definition qualifies is what I'm asking. But
certainly,
and I would imagine that has gone up due to COVID, based on people losing their livelihoods and so on. So
I wouldn't want to speculate to it. I'd rather look at the number. And we're now at the point of the year where we have reasonably stable numbers. That usually always takes to the 15th day or just beyond to get stable numbers.
Okay. Well, my request of you, and I'm going to forward to you and the board, a wonderful presentation on NPR that I heard on Sunday morning called Remote Learning Presents Additional Challenge for Students Experiencing Homelessness. And it was really interesting just to hear all the different types of unique barriers that homeless students are facing, even to be able to participate in any kind of learning right now. So I am very thankful that you are carefully prioritizing getting students back in who have the most urgent needs. And we've all discussed the priorities of the youngest learners and those with special needs. But I would like to ask you to, you and the staff, to look at considering the homeless as one of those groups that should be given top priority in their need to return.
Yes, ma'am, certainly.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Cristobal O'Connor. At this time, I will call on Ms. Wells.
Yeah, just thank you, Ms. Leventis Wells. Just really quickly, a couple of follow-up questions or one comment. When you said that the largest class size we have right now is what number? Outside of, I know band and that would, that's different.
Taking band and PE out of the mix, Mr. McCoy, you just sent me that, but at high school, we have about 1,500 classes that are above 26, correct? And we have about 1,000 middle school classes that are above 26.
Is that, how many of those are virtual versus
those
hybrid?
Those are non-virtual classes.
Those are the hybrid.
Again, that takes out PE, band, chorus, that sort of thing. And you can imagine you cannot put more. I don't know a way for us to figure to put even 26 in 800 square feet and do what we need to do. But to try to kind of quantify the boundaries of that, we looked at 26 or more. And do you have those?
Yes, sir. It was 1,000. It was 1,459 high school courses over 21 and 925 middle school courses over 21.
Over 21, which is kind of the upper limit. You're saying above 21.
When we lay out room in 800 square feet, I believe, Philip, the max we were able to get in any of them was 21. At given 6 feet, where there's 6 feet total.
Right.
I'm sorry, I said 26, 21.
But we aren't looking at, our class sizes, we worked on our high school classes in previous years to try to keep the class size down to under 30.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So
and we still have some that are over 30. Now, our core class size, I don't know if Jeff has that with him, it's closer to the 21. Now, what that also doesn't, he ran an average and he took out of the average the PE, chorus, and band, and he also took out the 10s or less. We might have an AP class with 10 in it because they're really not that's not an issue. That's not a concern. It's when it hits that 21, and there's a significant number over 26. I don't remember what that number is.
So it's not impossible to imagine that we could figure out some creative use of space and configurations that might allow us to get, even as this continues, if it continued as it was, to be able to get our students, even our high school students, back in school.
It would be extremely difficult as long as that 6 foot exists. Because when you also have to think about it this way. The size of the room for a high school student is the same as the size of a room for a 4th grader. Then thinking about the difference in the literal size of a high school student.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification there. So then the other thing I wanted to just mention or ask about when we were having this conversation about being more specific with what we're asking DHEC with regard to partitions. Mm-hmm. So similarly, in that my frustration has been that the data sets we're using maybe aren't really comprehensive enough to understand the risk for a specific community with regard to, all the factors that would weigh in, like how much, access you have to health care and hospital bed capacity and, that whole percentage of positive test, all that. So if we believe that the most prudent thing to do to get something decided on the partitions would be for us to send something very specific to DHEC, could we similarly work with our local medical community and try to have them suggest some alternative data sets specific to our community that we could use to understand the risk and thereby understand the levels that we might consider going back to school?
To this point, our local medical community has been very willing and very helpful to give us advice. I think they hesitate to go beyond giving us advice because of the liability that might fall to them to go beyond giving us advice.
Right, and I think that's where I would just thinking along the same lines of the partitions, is it that we should maybe be more specific in what we ask DHEC to consider?
I would certainly ask them the question you have asked me. I believe, but I'll ask them. I believe they might revert back to, we'll be glad to give you all advice, which you may take or leave. But to go beyond that and make recommendation as to do something or not incurs a liability we don't wish to incur. And I understand that.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions?
Let me go back and clarify something because I pulled it up here. In an 800 square foot classroom, we can socially distance 17 students with 6 feet. If you're able to do less than 6 feet, at 5 to 6, you can get 21. In less than 4 feet, you might can get to 26, less than 4 feet. And then that also gets into when you think about the size of those, literally the size of those students. When you talk about trying to use plexiglass in there, it becomes an issue of their movement around, and then it becomes to a point where it does obstruct the airflow. So high school is the most difficult place to move to 5 days without there being this significant drop in the virus. It is also almost, but not quite as difficult to look at that at the middle school level. But those are also the students that are most able to work more independently.
Mr. Suddeth, I'm sorry, Ms. Wells, are you finished? Thank you, Ms. Wells. Great questions. Mr. Suddeth?
If we look at the bottom line, Dr. Royster, if DHEC tells us we no longer need to social distance, then we can go back to regular 5-day school.
Yes, sir, that would be the ultimate bottom line there if they say it is no longer necessary to do so. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Anyone else? Dr. Royster, it seems like our career centers, our students in the career centers could come up with some type of plexiglass or some kind of partition that we could make right there in our career centers, as bright as our students are. That's just a recommendation to think about. Utilize our talents right here in our district. With that being said, we'll move now to 5.01. Duke Energy Carolinas LLC easement request at Summit Elementary School. There's a recommended motion from the administration to approve the easement as requested by Duke Energy Carolinas LLC at Summit Drive Elementary School as shown on Exhibit A.
So moved.
There's a motion by Mr. Meek. Is there a second? There's a second by Ms. Bush. Any questions for Dr. Royster? Do you? And
Colonel
Mr.
Carlin's
Carlin?
here if you have a question. It's pretty straightforward.
Where's Colonel Collin?
He
There he is.
was right here.
Colonel. Are there any questions concerning Summit Elementary? I would just like to say thank you for all your work over there. I go over there, I go by there daily, and there's constant movement and things happening. So thank you so much. Very appreciative. Do you have anything you'd like to say? Well, good. I am too. Thank you. All right. All in favor, please address by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries. Thank you so much. 5.02 External Audit Services Contract. There is a recommended motion from the administration to approve the accounting firm Green Finley LLP to provide external audit services to the school district of Greenville County.
So moved.
So a motion made by Ms. Wells
That's fine.
and seconded by Mr. Sailors. Any questions? Hearing none. All those in favor, please address by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries. Thank you. 5.03 Physical Education Exemption. The recommended motion from the administration is to approve a physical education exemption for one student at Wade Hampton High School. I will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Mr. Meek made the motion to approve a physical education exemption for one student at Wade Hampton High School and seconded by Mrs. Wells. Any questions? All in favor, please address by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? I'd like to thank Dr. Crystal Ball O'Connor and Ms. Grayson. We're getting your eyes up there, okay? 5.04 Audit of Berea High School Student Activity Fund. Yes, ma'am, Ms. Bush.
To accept the audit of the Berea High School Student Activity Fund revenue.
Motion made by Ms. Bush and seconded by Mr. Meek. Any questions? Hearing no questions, all in favor, please address by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries. 5.05 Audit of Greenville County School Warehouse Inventory.
Madam Chairman,
Yes, sir, Mr. Sutter. Mr. Sailors.
I've been called worse.
It's a compliment.
And I'll take it as a compliment, Coach. Thank you.
Mr. Sailors.
Yes. I make a motion to accept the audit of the Greenville County Schools warehouse inventory for fiscal year 2020.
And it's seconded by Ms. Goodwin Caldwell. Any questions? Ms. Wells.
I'm not gonna hold up progress for a minute, but
Dr. Turner.
the swing in value in terms of warehouse inventory, can you kind of explain that?
I will let Ms. Stack explain that.
We'll pass the buck there, Scott.
The increase in value, we added some security camera parts to the inventory, and that's what increased the value of the inventory.
So we said that's like a $400,000 increase in that. So we expect to kind of maintain that level of inventory.
The parts, I believe the parts that we put in inventory were hard to get because they're used to fix security cameras and replace security cameras that aren't working any longer. So I think that once we use those parts, inventory will decrease somewhat.
I meant before to ask that question because over time, over the last 10 years, the warehouse inventory value has increased triple.
Any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor, please address by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the motion carries. 6.01 Committee Liaison Reports. Do I have any reports? No reports? All right, hearing none, we will have finance report. Ms. Stack?
We don't have any formal finance report this month, but I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Mr. Meek?
Sure. I haven't asked for a while, so what's our fund balance?
So we are just now officially closing out FY20, and the final fund balance will be reported in the CAFR financial statements, which come to the board in November.
Give me a hint.
What's the current absent any addition based on Green Finney Horton's closeout of the CAFR? My question makes sense to you?
No, not really, but
What is it before we add some to it from last year's revenue and excessive expense?
so we closed FY19 with around 150 million, and we set aside 25 from the board, by the board, so 125 million. If that helps.
And that's totally unassigned?
Yes, unassigned.
Okay. And so it should be a little more than that normally.
I would suspect it is going to be more than that.
Added to that when they close out.
Yes, yes.
Give me a stack.
Sure.
Thank you. And Mr. Lewis.
So I know earlier this week we received the 15-day head counts, and it included a number of students that we project have left the district and gone to either homeschool or private schools, which were students that we expected to be in our numbers when we created our budget. So is there I know we anticipated some loss in our summer projections, and we've also held back some funds in reserve. Are we at a place where the number is high enough that we're going to need to reevaluate the budget, or do we have any projections on when that?
No, sir. And what you got is a straight pupil count, which obviously there's a weighted value to those pupils. So there'll be, we'll continue to track that during the course of the year. If they all were valued at a 1.0, based on what we currently get in EFA, it would not rise to the level that you'd need to take any action at this point. It'd be covered by either what we have frozen, or if we had to ask you to come and take action to transfer out of fund balance, we could do that. I don't think that's going to be necessary.
Is it 45 days? It's the next day that we count, or?
The one that really counts is the 135th day. That's when it's all trued up.
So between now and then, we're just basically adjusting, and
we'll continue to watch it, but the lost revenue associated with that number of students, given the overall dollar amount of our budget, and given the EFA revenue that is not tied to student count, it's actually tied. The vast bulk of that's now tied to the what do they call the position system?
PCS.
Say again.
PCS.
The PTS system, which is actually our submission to the state of our professional personnel. That's how they calculate EIA salary and fringe. So that doesn't go up or down related to pupil count, only in that we would tend to hire more teachers when our student count went up. But we hired our teachers based on the projection. So it's not gonna, the drop will be in pure EFA. And I believe it might rise to the level that you would consider it significant, which would be over a couple of $1 million in our budget, over a couple of $1 million. But it's certainly at this point not something that really wouldn't be offset by those frozen line items in the budget.
And then the second part of that question is, we also staffed at an expected number, and now we have fewer than that. So do we expect a reduction in our workforce as a result of the reduction in students that we expected, or are we going to hold at the number that we staffed?
Because all the calculations that we do based on pupils, not all of them, the vast majority of them are classroom teachers. The other positions are people like counselors, assistant principals, people at the school level directly serving students. We don't have any plan to reduce those positions, even though the pupil count might have gone down. That caused us not to add some right before school started. That it might have caused that. But we were at the point because we hired so late for virtual, because we had to get a count, and we held positions because we wanted to try, if at all possible, to hire people that were really interested in teaching virtual and qualified to do so. The pool is very shallow. Because normally our hiring time is February and March. That's when we want to get it done. So there are not a lot of folks out there if we had the need for additional teachers right now.
The last question I just have as part of that is we also froze teacher step increases and salaries because we anticipated the General Assembly perhaps coming back with some changes in their budget. It's my understanding now that currently is not moving forward. Is that correct at the state level?
It is right now not moving forward. It doesn't appear likely to move forward. There is a possibility that they could revisit that in January.
Without it moving forward at the state level between now and January, we would not anticipate being brought to the board unfreezing those step increases.
No, sir.
Until there's additional funds coming from Columbia.
No, sir. We would not anticipate doing that.
Thank you.
Ms. Wells.
So similarly, in terms of the impact we might be seeing at the local level, I know it's a little early for you guys to show us your trends and the reports on property taxes, but I know you're tracking it. So where are we with what impacts are we seeing from our local portion of property tax in terms of our school funding?
Robin can speak more recent knowledge. The last time she and I talked about it, we were tracking along our expectation for property tax revenue. Has that changed within the last week or so, Robin?
No, sir. FY20, we ended up right on budget. So it's not the time of the year where a lot of tax revenue comes in for us during these months. So as of right now, we're still doing fine.
So I know what we've talked about over the last several years is kind of always the concern with the vehicle, in particular the vehicle property tax, not knowing when that's going to plateau and then maybe take a nosedive. So we don't really know yet. We haven't seen if there's anything there.
Well, it's not tracking to really decrease significantly. Now, it dropped some last year.
It did.
And it's still following that same drop from last year, but not dropping more.
Okay.
So it's not going the other way, but it's not continuing to fall off. So
that's encouraging.
Yeah. Okay, what we have, the news we have there at this point is reasonably good news.
Good. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Leventis Wells.
Thank you, Ms. Wells. I'd like to thank Dr. Crystal Ball O'Connor as well as Ms. Grayson for zooming in.
Madam Chairman.
Thank all of the board members, and now we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
You got it.
Mr. Sailors and seconded by Ms. Wells. Any questions? All in favor, please address by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, good night. And y'all drive home